It is a truth universally acknowledged that superhero movies have taken a nosedive in the last few years. Marvel had been going strong for a decade before they decided that their cred with the fans was too good and then proceeded to blow it all up. DC never had a chance to get their extended universe off the ground, what with constant reshoots, terrible writing, and replacing directors left, right, and center. It's really a shame because they could have built a universe that might have been better than what the MCU had put together. But the insistence on keeping problematic actors, hiring actors that are horribly miscast, and giving directors far too much leeway in writing ensures that their universe was dead before it ever hit the box office. I'm not sure I'll ever forgive DC for that because the universe they could have put together, if they simply used the massive amounts of source material and cartoons that they had at their disposal, could have been completely glorious. To this day, I am still obsessed with the Justice League Unlimited cartoon because that show was so well done, and to think that we might have gotten something similar if people actually put in the work drives me crazy. But we'll never know now because the DC Extended Universe has collapsed and Marvel is currently in freefall. Both Warner Brothers and Disney have plenty of evidence to articulate their failing superhero films amidst crashing stock market and shareholder numbers, the enormous amounts of debt that have been racked up with both companies, and the general way in which they have alienated the fans with identity politics. But I've talked about those things at length in my other videos, so if you're interested in my thoughts on the subject, head on over to my channel to see more. Today, however, I want to talk about the latest Marvel movie that is set to be released in theaters in November. And in my opinion, this is the movie that fans have the most reasons to not care about. With a budget of $274 million, this film has a high bar to cross if they want to actually earn some money, never mind breaking even. And given that Brie Larson as Captain Marvel is one of its titular characters, I feel comfortable saying that this movie is unlikely to do very well. Despite the fact that Marvel is currently spiraling down the drain, I still have full confidence that they are capable of making great movies. No Way Home was evidence of that. I know that it was a joint production with Sony, but I know that Marvel did have a hand in it, and that movie is one of the best of the last 3 years. And that's what makes this whole thing so frustrating. They know how to do it. They have the source material to make fantastic films, but they won't because they have let activists into the writing rooms and production areas who have decided that storytelling must take a back seat to a message that we're all sick of hearing and don't believe in. We're all tired of the lack of accountability in storytelling and directors who are so self-righteous and arrogant that they have to tear down franchises in order to feel better about themselves. And we're also sick of actors and actresses that can't keep their mouths shut and constantly have to harp on their activism for cred. And that's where we're going to start today. Because truly, there are only 3 reasons that no one cares about the upcoming Marvels movie. Talking about some of them might be the equivalent of beating a dead horse, but I'm going to do so anyway because it still needs to be said. The first reason is the obvious one, and it is quite simply Captain Marvel herself. I've seen Brie Larson's work outside of the role of Captain Marvel, and she is largely an uneventful character. She doesn't do much to contribute to the general storyline. She is serviceable enough that she isn't noticed, and yet not so annoying enough that she becomes a problem. And for this reason, I truly think that the role of supporting character is probably the best one for her. Her acting skills are not strong enough, in my opinion, to carry a movie all on her own without making her character unlikable. When she is playing a role, but not the primary one, that is when her character becomes one that I have no issues with. In Kong, Skull Island, she was a perfectly fine character, but maybe that was because there were so many characters in that movie that sometimes she got lost in the background. It also doesn't help that her somewhat niche personality and raging feminism in interviews turn her off to many potential fans. Samuel L. Jackson, despite the fact that they are friends, has demonstrated just how much of a political motivated person she is. And while I can empathize with a person's desire to fight injustice, perceived injustice on the part of some imagined feministic slight is where you lose me. And Captain Marvel is unfortunately that character that is unbelievably feminist and rather unlikable because of it. And it's not just because of the way that she acts in the movie, it's the entire way that the Captain Marvel movie is written. From the very beginning, with the loss of her memories, we are presented with a Carol that is undeniably a warrior, one who knows how to fight and hold her own against her peers. However, the fight between her and her captain at the beginning of the movie has her getting knocked down and trying to use her new space stone abilities to take him out. It works, but she's cautioned against doing so in the future. It isn't a very large stretch of the imagination that this statement is about far more than just Carol's powers. Her male captain is trying to stop Carol from being her truest self. The movie needed to establish early on that Carol is being repressed and that her powers make her different and special, so she shouldn't use them because people will fear her because of it. But more importantly, that she will be far more difficult to control if she does. And that's the key thing here. The movie spends a great deal of time trying to keep Carol on a leash, muzzling her so that she cannot be who she was truly meant to be. The only thing that changes by the end of the movie is her mindset and her restored memories. She doesn't need to fight to prove herself, becoming something she was not at the beginning of the movie. This is especially true at the end of the movie when she looks at her former Kree captain after their fight and says that she doesn't need to prove anything to him. Practically every movie since the MCU's conception has been about the hero's journey and the main character having to prove themselves in some way or another. Often it means them undergoing complete character change by the end, enabling them to become less selfish, more compassionate, introspective individuals. But Captain Marvel is none of those things. The only thing that is different about her by the end of the movie is the fact that her leash is now gone. Her handlers don't have control over her anymore, and she has taken back her own autonomy. The movie was never about saving the Skrulls or meeting Nick Fury or even becoming one of the defenders of Earth. Instead, it was all about feminism and how Carol as a woman had been held back from being who she truly was by her male counterparts. That doesn't sound like a particularly compelling introduction to the character to me. And when Bree insists on calling her character the strongest Avenger and displays a bit of that without showing any sense of life in her character, well, it's a little hard to take her seriously. She's the first reason why people will not care about seeing this movie, but she certainly won't be the last. The second reason is Miss Marvel. I could only get through one episode of the Disney Plus show before I had to call it quits. It's not like it's the actress's fault, as it's her first major project, but Miss Marvel was maybe one of the most boring shows that I have ever seen. But it wasn't until much later that I was able to compare what I had seen of the show to Captain Marvel herself and realize that there were a few similarities. Kamala comes from a world where emotions and actions are carefully regulated. Her parents have a stranglehold on her life and she's expected to act the part of a good Muslim girl lest she incur a sense of shame upon the family. I find her situation a bit more sympathetic simply because she's a young teenager and has the weight of cultural expectations upon her. But that still doesn't negate the fact that the idea of control and breaking free of her parents' repressive atmosphere is one of the major driving factors of the show. She wants to be a superhero and doesn't really have to change anything about herself to become one. Instead, she receives a bracelet that does all of the work for her, and all of a sudden, she is a superhero, who she has always been without the weight of her parents' influence. She no longer fears their reaction, and the superpowers have suddenly made her her true self. She is now limitless and boundless and suddenly completely unafraid. Because you see, just like Captain Marvel, she didn't really have to change. She just found something that told her who she was supposed to be already, and now her outsides match her insides. Monica Rambeau is similar as well. Despite the fact that she has not had her own movie or television show, she is still a character that chafed under the weight of restriction and obligation. She gets her superpowers without really doing anything for them and is somehow using them now without too much issue, weird body swapping aside. She excuses a known criminal like Wanda Maximoff from mentally enslaving an entire town with what is likely to be some of the worst pieces of writing the MCU has ever prepared, and then lets that same person go free and easy at the end of the show, making Wanda's decision to relinquish control sound like the noble, virtuous option. She might not be as fleshed out as the other two, but her actions are still morally reprehensible, and she, along with Wanda, should be spending some time aboard the raft for it. And yet, once again, it is all about control. Monica throws off her obligations to S.W.O.R.D. in order to go rescue a known criminal that she wants to be friends with, and the writers have the audacity to insinuate that Tyler was the true evil behind the show. And knowing this, Monica is herself given a pass because she now has become a liberated female superhero who does not need to take orders from anyone ever again because she has come into her true self. That's really all it's been about, hasn't it? Becoming the truest version of who we always were. If that isn't the most foolish thing I've ever heard. And all of this has culminated in The Marvels, a movie filled with characters that are unlikable, irrelevant, or else delusional being trapped in each other's lives and or bodies as they attempt to figure things out and work together to save the day. Now, does that sound like something the average superhero fan would be interested in? I plan to go see the movie because it will be just cannon fodder for my channel, but it's a testament to Marvel's lack of budgeting and the overall cast of this movie that the Marvels will not make any profits. Of course, don't call me Nostradamus. I could be wrong, but I think the chances of that are quite low. After all, I don't think Brie Larson, a teenager, and a character who is morally inept are going to be the thing that brings the MCU back to life. That and the reshoots and the utterly abysmal CGI that we can expect from Marvel is pretty much a guarantee that this movie will be dead upon arrival. Thanks so much for watching this video, guys. What are your thoughts on the Marvels, and do you care enough to watch it, or are you just watching the Marvel and Disney dumpster fire with a bowl of popcorn and laughing your head off like I am? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Until next time, everyone.